Nation Radio here with Luke Thomas, post-fight UFC 244, brought to you by Musashi. Now, Luke, look at this. Victory beer for the big man after a bit. And by the way, it's
not much of a victory.
I mean, first of all, the victory is that we're still here and alive. Right now, what are we looking at? We're looking at 3 a.m. It was supposed to be 4, time change. So everybody deserves a good beer. But outside of the beer and the drinking and what's happening right now,
cheers, by the way.
We're all doing the cheers. And by the way, this is Jorge's actual cup that he was drinking out of.
Smells like rubbing alcohol.
Would you like to try it?
No. You know what? Fuck it.
Why not? Why not? Let's all try some. It's good enough for Jorge Masvidal.
A little bit each.
Save a little bit, Luke.
Masvidal?
Actually, that's pretty good. Ooh, it's smoky. Right?
Yeah. Oh, it's delicious.
Taste the smoke on
it's
that.
so good.
All right.
So nice.
We are fucking gross.
What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, UFC 244. So, Masvidal Nate Diaz just goes down, and it gets stopped at Madison Square Garden. People are booing. People are going crazy. Luke, let's just kick it off from here. What did you think of Masvidal's performance against Nate leading into that sort of stoppage?
Yeah, the performance was great. I mean, whatever you want to say about the stoppage and the title and sort of the pomp and circumstance of it all, there's a big debate there. There's no debate over that performance. The judges said it as well. He had a 10-8 on 2 different scorecards. I believe that's right. It was interesting. If you pay attention to Masvidal's career, it was many of the same weapons. That elbow he caught Nate with, that's the same elbow he dropped Mutanchi with. Sort of the 1-2s that he landed on Cerrone, you saw here, the shuffle with his feet. He did that against Till. It was many of the classic, in the stand-up sense. Then on the ground, he had good defense. You saw Diaz trying to set up De La Hiva the whole time, and he stopped him from doing it. Like, dude, I'm not going to say it was kind of a schooling, to be quite honest with you. Now, of course, the counter is Diaz was just getting warmed up. That's a matter of debate. We'll never know. But for what we did see, that was a one-sided affair.
I feel like the theatrics and the pageantry of everything was pretty incredible, but it was so underwhelming. And it was a hilarious moment where somebody asked Diaz about the irony that the fight for the baddest motherfucker title was stopped by a doctor, not by either man, not by a decision. Everybody wanted those 5 rounds. What did you think about the actual doctor stoppage? A lot of people are very quick to sort of crap on New York, the commission. Dana White was saying it looked pretty bad backstage. Diaz, of course, was saying, look, it's not a big deal. Where do you stand on the stoppage?
Here's the thing about that. It's like, under what basis am I allowed to make a medical decision here? I've not signed the Hippocratic Oath. I've not been to medical school. I don't know what I'm looking at. Are you asking me, have I seen cuts worse? Yep, I have seen. The Tyson Fury cut was worse. Did you guys see that one in his last fight?
Yeah.
Like, it was a terrible cut. So I've seen worse. I didn't see a lot of blood, but it's like, did the doctor go in there and then see skull? Like, what did he see that alarmed him? My whole point is, if you're a doctor and in a main event in a state like this, you don't have to come to the press room and talk to us, but it seems to me like you should be able to, how when we get the, so for folks who don't know this, any fighter who wins on a UFC card, they send the scorecard and then a quote from the fighter, right? And it's usually like a couple of sentences to a paragraph. Why not have the doctor say, I saw bone, and here's why that's medically alarming. So that,
Great idea.
So that everybody knows what the situation is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not in a position to say. Dan Hardy thinks that if it was in Vegas, it would have gone longer. But either way, I've seen worse, but it also looked bad. I just feel like we're working with incomplete information. I wish I knew more. But his eye didn't look good, man. It looked bad. It looked bad.
Can we squash the notion that because this was for the BMF title, that there should be somehow, a situation where there should have been more allowed? That it's for a BMF title. This is not the way it works,
I always
right?
feel like less was allowed. I think the commission saw this crazy event with The Rock being involved and with his BMF title being involved and with the president being there. Almost we're a bit tighter with the rules because of the situation.
But I don't think that it should be a case where it's like the BMF title's on the line. Let's see these guys
Someone
kill
should
each
die in
other.
the ring.
You know what I mean? We've got to draw the line somewhere. And at the end of the day, it's a fight with a made-up title. The rules should not be stretched in any way.
Well, right. I mean, you can bring in The Rock and you can make up your own belt and you can call it what you want, but the safety protocol doesn't change. Right. The interpretation of the safety protocol varies state to state. So you could have done that a little bit different, but they're not going to change the rules of MMA just to accommodate you. Unless it was Japan, in which case there's no commission, and then you really can do whatever you want. But we got the BMF thing. People just took it too literally. It's like, okay, now there's a belt, and now there's a division, and now you're gonna defend it, and like this was a real thing. It was a fucking marketing gimmick, and it was a good one, and I'm not against it. But bro, the rules are the rules. So this is where we are.
Yeah, I see the rematch in international waters on a big cruise ship with Luke Thomas over here serving drinks and dancing around. I'm just wondering.
Me and Jorge Masvidal drinking each other's backwater.
Well, I was just wondering. I mean, this rematch. I mean, we're looking at it. Dana says he doesn't think it's next for Jorge. What do you think should be next after this situation?
Whoever makes him a bunch of money is the way what I'm hearing from folks close to him. So I was thinking, because Colby and Kamaru fight next month, I was like, oh well, it's going to be that's pay-per-view money. If let's say Colby wins, oh wow, Jorge Colby grudge match pay-per-view money. But what I'm hearing is Masvidal's going to get pay-per-view points. He got it on this one, and he's going to get them no matter what. So he doesn't need another dance partner who also gets pay-per-view to get that. So I don't think they're going to give him McGregor. I don't really buy that. I guess either a rematch or with Nate or I don't know, a 185 or maybe, or something off the beaten path. I'm not entirely certain. I don't know.
UFC typically, they like to sort of make the quick money, and I feel like the quick money would be in a rematch. I'm not saying that necessarily is the best way they would go, but they would make a lot of money from it. Where do you think Nate goes from here? Because he was here just before in the post-fight press conference saying to the UFC politely, fuck you, but I hope we can work together and be friends. And he's expecting them to be difficult, but he doesn't want them to be. Do you think this is another situation where we may not see Nate Diaz for another few years potentially?
A few years seems a little strong, but a little bit of a time, yeah, maybe, right? I mean, that dude, I don't know, you guys were at Media Day, right? Like, you couldn't, when you look at Jorge, you can't see scar tissue on his face. Was it Wednesday, Thursday, whatever we were there, Thursday? Dude, you can, from Nate Diaz, if he's from us to this camera, you can clearly see scar tissue on his face. I don't mean tonight, I meant a week ago you could. It's like it's tattooed on there. You can't miss it. That takes time to heal. It never really does heal, but between Jorge having a lot of options, probably more than we even are able to inventory, and the physical ailment that Nate Diaz has, his popularity is not going to go anywhere, but he's a little bit not so much. He's been in the driver's seat this whole time. I'm not suggesting to you he doesn't have shots to call, but he's not. I think Jorge, I'm not saying surpassed him in star power, but in terms of being able to get first dibs on the cooler opportunities, I think he's surpassed him probably for the time being.
Just quickly, I know that by the time Nate returns, some of the main guys in the division may change around, right? But is there any trajectory that you see likely for Nate? Like, he's saying he doesn't want to fight Joe Blows. Do you think this may be the Conor trilogy, depending on how him versus Cerrone goes? Are there any other really, when you think about what Nate wants, there's not really a lot of options, right?
No, there's not. That's the problem with it. Like, his idea about what he wants to do is great, and then when the rubber meets the road, you're like, you're running out of space here. I mean, Jorge was a great one for those reasons, and also it's like, dude, I think he's dying to not have his life tied to Conor McGregor all the time. I mean, I think he wants that in his back pocket. Of course, who wouldn't? But just to have your life defined by another person, it's like Daniel Cormier. Why'd he go to heavyweight? So people would stop asking him about John fucking Jones for a little while. But even that really doesn't get the job done. So they're going to have to get creative, dude. They're going to have to get creative.
Maybe. Dustin thinks he's
but
next.
Also, remember this. The more time you take off, the more interesting possibilities arise. So that's why I'm thinking, is he going to come right back? If they do the rematch, yes. If they don't, he might sit out a little, up to a year. But, in MMA, in a year, Israel, a year ago, Adesanya was fighting, Brunson or something? And now look at him. So things could change quickly in that sense.
Just speaking of Adesanya, I mean, in his division, middleweight, Darren Till was able to beat Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, that was something where people couldn't even conceive Darren Till winning. Very few people thought he could do it. And when the fight was put together, people thought the UFC was crazy. Dana White even admitted that this matchup didn't make any sense.
Tried to talk him out of it.
So what do you make of Till's win? Did you have him winning this fight?
You mean beforehand? No, I didn't. I thought, I don't try to do predictions anymore, but my hunch was that it was going to go poorly for him because Gastelum looked so good against Adesanya, even in a losing effort. And then Darren just, he couldn't get out of really first or second gear against Jorge and then Tyron. But, dude, he looked great. He didn't look super offensively potent. But, how, for example, let me give you one thing. What? Go back to his other fights. What was he commonly known for? Stalking, kind of being flat-footed, and then leaning to get out of the way. He never did that. He was constantly on his horse, constantly using footwork, constantly circling, constantly getting out of the way. It kept him defensively responsible. When Kelvin would come at him, he would throw punches, and then he would rotate and pivot around him, resetting the exchange on his terms constantly. it didn't allow him to get off a little bit with his hands until the third round, but it made him so much more defensively sound. And at 185, he's got the gas tank to make that style possible. So to me, it's like, dude, we were going to throw Kevin Lee away. We were going to throw Darren Till away. These guys are in their mid-20s. What the fuck are we doing? Including me. Like, what the fuck were we doing? So you got to give these guys time when they're in that space. They're different people fight over fight. Like Wonder Boy, he can change a few things up, but he's 37. Like, he kind of is who he is. But for Till, like, he's going to be something completely different in 3-4 years. Let's see what it looks like.
Just because you mentioned Kevin Lee, I want to ask you what you thought about his performance, because that was another one where, like, a lot of people were I picked Gregor Gillespie. A lot of people thought this is a really tough test for him. And much like with Darren Till, you know, people were writing him off before the fight even began. And, like, he destroyed Gillespie in arguably his best win. What did you think of that? And did it surprise you in any way?
So I did think Lee was going to win, but not in the way that he did. Because the thing about Gregor Gillespie, it's like, who was the toughest guy he fought to date? Jordan Rinaldi's a good wrestler, but it was like Yancy Medeiros, who's a fine talent, but not in the way that Lee is. And again, Lee, 26, 27, dude, and it was with Faraz, and like I didn't know exactly how he was
Using
gonna
that jab nicely.
Yeah, I didn't know how he was going to get it done exactly, and then he comes out. He came out, him and the common denominator, the through line between Till and Lee was that they had a game plan that someone helped with them come up with, I'm sure, but that they stayed disciplined and focused the whole time. One fight was longer than the other, obviously, but he had that short stance, took away the wrestling, which made Gillespie rely much more on his striking, which there's not a whole lot to. And then Lee just set him on fire. Great combination, good vision, good shot selection, good timing. Obviously, the accuracy of it is insane. Didn't play games, just seemed so dialed in. And again, was that a guy you saw like when he was fighting the Iaquintas of the world? No. But he's 27 or something like that. You got to give these guys time to get better, you know?
It's interesting that you bring up his win because people are sort of wondering what's next for him, and he kind of wants the toughest fights. He's not that focused on the title.
Yeah, he wants Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
And it's kind of a little bit like Till as well, just circling back for a second. I mean, when you look at a guy like Till, when you look at a guy like Lee, and especially with Till, do you think this Israel Adesanya title fight makes sense for Till next, considering if his knee's okay in a stadium? Or would you prefer to see Israel fight a guy like Yoel Romero, who lost his last fight to Paulo Costa?
So I spoke to Adesanya about this yesterday, and his argument at the time was he wanted Romero, even though his argument was it's not about records, it's not about stocks, it's about answering the casual fans, because he's trying to find the guy that the casual fans say, oh, that's the guy to beat you. And it was Kelvin, then Whitaker, and then maybe even Brunson before that and all that kind of stuff. So he thinks Romero is the guy that the casual fans look to now. I don't think that the casual fans look to Till in that way right now. One never knows how things will go. I asked him, was like, well, who should Till get next? He was kind of saying maybe Whitaker. You know, Till versus Whitaker, see how that goes. So I'd be interested in that fight. But then the way, in hearing Adesanya talk, he thinks it's going to be Romero next, and then he wants Cannonier to get one more fight. So maybe Cannonier-Till. That'd be a hell of a fight, and then the winner of that, you know. So Till's close, but not that close.
It's kind of crazy because that's a potential multi-million-dollar stadium fight that Adesanya's sort of throwing away because he wants to get the casual fans, you know, not to have this argument against him. And at the same time, Adesanya's such a smart guy. But do you think him focusing on the opinion of casual fans and who he fights next could be maybe not the smartest idea when you kind of look at it?
Yeah, I guess a little bit. On the other hand, like the Romero one would sell better than most. I feel like it's sell better than. Well, the Till ones might sell pretty
Stadium,
good. Yeah, you can.
Australia, all back his way.
Yeah.
Strikers up
because
against each
Romero's
other.
not going to say a whole lot. Like, he doesn't speak much. And Till's a bigger name, theoretically, but he's so respectful, right? So it's like, how's that build-up going to be?
And he's coming off a loss against Costa, too.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of factors.
It's an interesting
there.
situation.
But, like, the power of the fan base's momentum. I mean, look, living your life by the whims of fans seems like a bad idea. On the other hand, like, he also just has a keen sense of what would be good for his legacy, as well as, like, dude, if he's right that the fans think that, it would sell better than most, right? Because you're tapping into a general level of opinion, whether it's right or it's wrong, it's there, and answering for it seems to do something for you, if not so much in the immediate short run, certainly in the long run as well. So We'll see. I don't know.
I think that's something really respectable as well, because if you had to say like who might be his kryptonite, or who's someone that you would think the UFC would try and protect him from, it would be Romero.
Right. His argument was, who asked for Romero? Nobody asked for it, so he's asking for it.
And that's another way where he's different, right? And it's this crazy time where like Till's calling out Gastelum, Lee's calling out Gillespie, Israel's calling out Romero. It's a really fun time.
Yeah, Lee as well. Calling out, you could be calling out a Dan Hooker in New Zealand, but he's staying away from that. I mean, guys, in terms of guys calling each other out, Corey Anderson was in the back after his fight, and he was more vocal than ever. I'll be honest, we enjoy the trash talk from time to time. It's interesting to see a guy's personality. I feel like we've seen that more than ever today with Corey Anderson and his whole UFC run. What did you make of his performance over Walker? And do you think this is Dana White was out here. He kind of put his foot down and said, whatever's going to happen to Anderson next is what we're going to say. And Anderson was kind of saying, I want my release if I'm not getting this title. Do you think the UFC sort of folds a little bit and gives Anderson this title? Or do you think it's going to be a case where he's going to have to fight a few more tough dudes before he gets John Jones?
4-5 win streak, it's a hell of a win streak, but it doesn't match Dominic Reyes' win streak. And I spoke to him last night as well. He seems to think he's due. I asked him, like, is there something happening? He's like, not exactly, but we'll see. So there's a little bit of a holding pattern there. I guess John Jones tweeted Corey Anderson tonight, which he didn't really do for Dominic Reyes. So, obviously a big factor here is what does John want, and what John wants will play a role. I think Reyes is a better candidate, but 4 wins in a row for Corey Anderson, and then the last one by stoppage, Johnny Walker doing a bunch of hand stuff, and a lot of Jim Carrey smiling, and didn't do him a lot of good in the air. And the kind of bread and butter style that Corey Anderson has, it's not super flashy, but it's great for killing off some hype trains, isn't it? I mean, it's good. Those kinds of fundamentals are always better than not having it. So. In the end, I guess to answer your question, let's see what John wants. But if you're asking me what the UFC wants, I think the UFC is leaning Reyes. I don't know if John is. So that kind of creates a bit of an uncertainty there.
We'll let you go and get out of here because it is getting later and later by the second. But just wanted to get your thoughts on Stephen Thompson, because this is a guy that a lot of people kind of wrote off in the division. Yeah. He went from, headlining here in also not headlining, but having pivotal fights here in MSG a few years ago for the belt to kind of being forgotten, beating Masvidal, right?
Last guy to do it.
And now he had a really good performance. Like a lot of people called it the vintage Wonderboy performance against a really, really tough Vicente Luque. What did you make of, I guess, his advances and evolutions as a fighter?
You know what? Like I said, he's 37. You're not going to get a whole lot new. Here's what I'll say about him. I don't know how you boys felt. I thought the third round was classic Wonderboy. I thought the first 2 rounds, he was fighting his style, but he was exchanging a little bit more. Yeah. Like that was a brutal fight both ways, Luque got his licks in, but also it was like Wonderboy was sticking and moving the whole time, but he was doing a little bit more sticking and staying and then moving. Is that age? Was it a decision about a new offense? Was that a new offense as it relates to this particular opponent? I don't know, but it did seem to me fundamentally a little bit different with some pretty significant implications. It made for a much more fun fight, because honestly, if you go back and watch the Thompson-Masvidal fight, it's a fine fight, but it's not that great, from an entertainment standpoint. This one was, and partly because, dude, he was in there, like, in the words of Jorge Masvidal, thugging it out. So I like to see what's next from him. But to your point, quite redemptive. Everyone has deep respect for Vicente Luque, and that was a hard-earned win, and he did it looking like the guy that, again, by the third round anyway, we know and are accustomed to, and he's right back into the thick of things at welterweight.
I just want to finish on this, Luke. We know how much you love the WWE, The Rock. Getting an entry.
I would rather die than talk about this topic.
Well, The Rock. Well, look at it like this: Cain Velasquez beating up Brock Lesnar on WWE TV. Tyson Fury having a match with Braun Strowman. Now you get The Rock walking out into the octagon with the BMF title on his shoulder. We won't mention Donald Trump or anything like that, but let's just talk about The Rock. What did you make of this whole Rock experience? And from a perspective of someone who's maybe not the biggest fan in the world, how did you think it went?
Well, I don't hate on The Rock. As he had a show here in America called The Titan Games. Did y'all see that?
A little bit.
Yeah, it was. I liked it. It was kind of cool. It was a bit like Strongman. That's kind of weird. And look, man, he's made some fun movies that people have enjoyed across the world.
Walking Tall,
and my man started out with no money after playing at the University of Miami, so made his way through the world. I am not going to be a hater on those kinds of things. But dude, pro wrestling, I mean, it's how much? Okay, how much hate do I want to get for this? It's just silly. It's just really, I don't know how adults watch it. In any event, he seemed. Here's what I would say. He had the Mark Kerr okay, so he made the Mark Kerr
Which is a
announcement.
really cool
Yeah, but dude,
announcement.
how much like the average UFC fan today know about that
Well,
shit?
according to the crowd, he said everyone's
Zero.
excited, and then
Yeah.
they panned to the crowd.
It was like, yeah, there was
crickets.
Like, they were like, I'm sorry, who?
Yeah. And he's playing
But it's
Mark
cool
Kerr.
that he's doing it, so I like that. I like the fact that he was putting the belt on. I like the fact that he was incorporated. It just felt to me like he was a little. You're gonna laugh at me for saying this. A little underutilized, right? A little. I don't know. It was. I'm not
What
gonna,
more could he have done, do you think? Because I feel like it kind of fits this whole thing. We're an MSG. You know, there's been plenty of WrestleManias here. We got this made-up title, which was fantastic and fun. So it's like, why not just throw Rock in there? Like, everything is so fun and in silly some ways. Why not just throw him in there?
I would have loved to see him do like even the big stars like the A-listers at Comic-Con. They'll talk to the press.
Yeah.
This is selfish, of course, but I would love to see him take just even a few questions from the press. I thought it would have made a little bit more something. It just felt a little distant. So like everything was all very staged and set up and organized, and it was like North Korea, all real set up, and you don't really know. You know what I mean?
The Rock's here for a promotional vehicle, and that's it.
Exactly. He's in. He's out. He's doing his thing, and I get it. He's a busy man. He's got better things to do than talk to idiots like us. But at the same time, it kind of felt like that to me, just a little on the artificial turf side, you know.
I was expecting him to get a chair and maybe finish off Nate Diaz from under the ring or something like that.
I hope he
WrestleMania.
finishes you like that.
Well, there you guys go. An extremely aggressive Luke Thomas, who we made wait till 4 a.m., drink some of Mazadal's liquor and break down the WWE. Luke, thank you so much. Of course, check this man out on SiriusXM. Check him out on Showtime, one of the best in the game. We are
And his YouTube channel as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everything this guy does is gold. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a great trip here at UFC 244. Have a great night, and thanks for checking everything out.